Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Weyandt, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. This episode is part of our special Industrialized Construction series, recorded live from Advancing Prefabrication 2025. So buckle up. We're diving into the biggest trends, the boldest ideas, and the real conversations shaping the future of industrialized construction. My guest on this episode is Harriet Ingham. She leads Holmes Solutions construction sector in the USA, working to drive innovation in the industry through product research, development, and testing. Her background as a structural engineer, combined with experience in product design, enables her to lead projects that seek to improve material and labor efficiency through the design of new technologies. Now, on with the show. Harriet, thanks so much for taking the time to come talk to us today.
No worries.
So I'd love to get kind of your origin story. How'd you get into the world of construction?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I was in high school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I grew up, like most people.
Yeah.
And I was kind of going through a process of elimination, and just crossing out things, being like, no, not that, not that. And then had a really great maths teacher who, when I said, hey, I'm not really excited by what's left on this list that I've crossed everything out of, she was like, well, have you, you're quite strong in physics and maths. Have you thought about engineering? And I was like, no, like, that's not for me. And I just didn't know much about it at the time.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, well, it's a bit more complicated than just, playing with cars or pulling apart your toaster. Go have a look. And so I did that and immediately really resonated with structural engineering. I was like, I kind of thought about architecture and I was like, maybe I'll go into that. And then no, I was like, I'm gonna do structural engineering. So I moved to Auckland University. So I'm originally from New Zealand. Moved up to Auckland to start doing my structural engineering degree. And 2 days later, that my hometown had a massive earthquake. So Christchurch earthquake sort of killed over 180 people and 80% of our downtown got destroyed. And so here I am off to start my engineering degree. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going to have a problem finding a job after this because,
Mhm.
our whole city needed to be rebuilt. Did my structural engineering degree and then I worked as a structural engineer for 3 or 4 years at Holmes. And then after that, I decided to go traveling and came across to our sister company, Holmes Solutions. And that's where I am now. And we do product testing and research and development work. So I don't do too much of my structural engineering anymore, but yeah, we make and break things for the construction industry.
So make and break things for the construction. I love that. How does that tie in to prefab?
Yeah, so quite easily, in fact, because prefab, the minute you start thinking about doing prefabricated construction, you move away from like a project by project basis and you start thinking about it as a product. So when you were talking to people that are product developers and testers, prefab fits really right into our niche. So we do all sorts of things like doing time and motion studies to look at how we can facilitate modular or prefabricated assemblies more efficiently. But we also do things like design and test new connections that can be used in modular and prefab. And you just start to get the payoffs of that sort of evidence-based design approach when you're thinking of products, not projects, because prototyping and testing comes with, a cost. And so you want to be able to pay it off. And yeah, doing the prefab way and thinking about it in terms of products means you can be more innovative and you can recoup the cost of that additional research and development work.
On the kind of cultural mindset side of things, how do you see the industry embracing it, and what are some of the hurdles to kind of making it more mainstream?
I think overall the industry is starting to embrace it. And the reason that that's happening is because people are seeing that it is having benefits. It's having benefits in terms of the schedule that projects are able to achieve. It's having benefits in terms of when you start doing prefab and you do it right, you're not just building things inside, you're actually able to throw away the constraints that we have to deal with on a construction site. And they're pretty hard to deal with. And so it enables us to build in just totally different ways. And people that are doing that successfully have a story to tell that's pretty compelling, I think, to everyone else.
Yeah, for sure. That's a thing that I like to push back on, against the misconception that construction doesn't have the creativity and
Yeah.
the innovation. Just look around. Every job site is majorly creative and innovative.
It definitely is. I think maybe the reason why it's perceived as such is life safety is so important for our
Mm.
industries. because of that, we have a really tough compliance and regulatory framework that we have to operate within because, if a structural engineer does their job badly, it could kill thousands of people in seconds. So,
No pressure.
yeah, right. um, and so that's really the thing that has prompted us to have these compliance frameworks, and that's sort of stifled things a little bit. But I think, we are a group of innovators because we've learned to work within it and we've figured out ways to keep building and keep doing things a little bit differently. Maybe the pace is a little slower, but that's just the nature of such a massive industry.
So there's the balance between standardized and having the custom project built aspects of it. How do you come into that balance and be able to figure out what's the right need?
I think, as with anything, whether you are designing a project, whether you're designing a product, whether you're running a test, being really clear on what your objectives are
Hmm.
is the most important thing. Because if you've got really clear goals, then you're going to be able to start to filter out what you do and don't want to do. No matter who in construction you're talking to, whether it's the prefab people or the mass timber people or the concrete people, whoever it is, not one of those components is going to solve the issues that we as a sector face. We still have to build more. We still have to build more sustainably. We have to build faster. We need every single part of the whole industry working together to achieve that. And so I think you've got to figure out what pieces make the most sense for your particular thing that you're trying to achieve and not be afraid to sort of balance them and use what you do and don't want. Because I think when you try to do all one way or you start to turn your blinders on a little bit, I think that's when you have the more risk of not succeeding.
So the theme that pops up in that is then you are talking about collaboration with the different stakeholders and getting everybody at the seat of the table, which
Yeah.
can be messy. How do you handle that?
Well, and I just want to go back to that. It's like we were talking, I was listening in on one of the presentations recently, which were a couple of the airport owners. And so it was LAX and Dallas Fort Worth. And they were talking about in their prefab journey how they just started first with just a bathroom
Yeah.
because it made the most sense and they were testing it out. And I think, you don't have to go all in. You can figure out what the baby step is for you. And the word innovation gets thrown around a lot. And innovation for some of these people at this conference means that they are at the front edge of this industry. But for innovation for other people means that it's the first time that they're looking at doing prefab. And that's great. And I don't think you should be afraid to innovate or do that sort of stuff because, you're going to get a lot out of it no matter where you are in the process.
Yeah. I love that you talked about that with the innovation side of things because, a lot of people can get stuck on you have to do something just crazy big to be innovative when really it's totally dependent on your situation and where you are. The small little thing to somebody else can be a massive thing for you.
It is. And so I presented yesterday and we were talking in my presentation a bit about prototyping and the value of it and kind of emphasizing that a lot of people think of prototyping as this thing that they do right at the very end to be like, hey, we've done it. And it's like, no, it's something that's part of your design process. And it should be a thing that enables you to innovate and take that first step because you're like, I don't know if this is going to work. How can I just figure it out as quickly as possible? Yeah, we had this example where we were looking at a different way of using like a roadside jaw anchor in a mass timber connector.
Mhm.
And the roadside jaw anchor is used to grip a cable on a safety barrier on the side of a highway. And that's not novel. It's been used for years, but we were using it in a totally different way. So we had no idea if it was going to work. We had some idea. But rather than spending hours on CAD, like mocking it up and doing some calculations, we just had a rough hand sketch and some really capable guys in our R&D lab that just mocked up a prototype. And they're like, does it work? Oh yeah, it does. Okay, let's carry on for that. And so that's the thing about if you can de-risk it and take the baby steps, it's less overwhelming than just trying to do everything all at once.
I like the phrase de-risking there. Another aspect of that is redefining failure, that it's not, some scary four-letter word.
Yeah.
And the whole adage of fail fast and learn from it, move on. Is that mindset kind of creeping in more, you think, in construction?
I think so. And it's hard because failure in construction can mean lives lost, and whereas failure in the tech industry might mean a few dollars lost. And so there's some bigger consequences. And we definitely are shifting that mindset to figure out how to fail in a safe way. But it's confronting, I think, for all of us to be wrong. But we firmly believe that if you're doing something innovative, you should be prepared to eat humble pie at least once or twice. Because if you're not at least 50% worried it's going to go wrong, you're probably not actually trying hard enough and you're not innovating. But every time I come to these conferences, you see new people that are trying new things and I think we are innovating as an industry, and I'm excited because we need everyone to do that. And it's cool to be able to come and share ideas here because me and my clients and the work that we do isn't going to solve everything. So I need everyone else to be coming up with some great ideas too. And it's you can always learn so much from other people.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about this conference is that the people that come are willing to share the good, the
Yeah.
bad, and the ugly. They'll tell you this worked great. This tell you this was a terrible idea. Don't do it. But you can learn from it and pull those insights for sure.
Absolutely.
Are there any kind of major trends that you're keeping tabs of in prefab right now?
There's a lot of construction tech that's out there. And there's lots of software. That's not really my domain or something that I look into a lot, but I love some of the tech that's coming out in more of like the robotics space. There's some really cool tools now that are used, to mark out floor grids. There's some really cool tools that are used to like do drywall and plastering and all of that. And there's some really cool tools that are used in high wind situations for like leveling loads and being able to fly loads when there's higher wind speeds out there. So all of those little cool tech things where you're like, oh, this is someone from the construction industry that's figured out a problem and figured out a solution to that, I think are really cool because they don't make a big splash always because they're just changing it in those useful, tiny incremental ways, but they have a big impact.
Yeah. So when you are talking about tech and some of the robotics pulls in AI and automation, how's that factoring into your world?
Yeah, it's interesting. We do a lot of like hardware and product testing, so we don't interact as much with AI and software, but it is interesting where we do a lot of these time and motion studies where there are some cool AI tools now that can help you like track people and movement. And we've trialed a few of them and they're cool in the way that they help you with the data processing, which these generate a lot of data. So that's definitely useful. But at the core of it, there's still so much value in having the people there that are going to generate those insights. And so, gosh, even when we started using more cameras with our time and motion studies, we still had someone there, at least one person there as the observer, because the cameras are kind of there as the backup. They're there to jog your memory or they help with the reporting. It's the person on site that's sort of there as you're running the study being like, that doesn't look right, or like we could do that better, or actually I have an idea. And so I love the AI tools that we're getting that are helping with reducing some of the monotony or the calculation or the data processing piece of it. So hopefully that frees up more time for, the humans to dig in and do the insights and the so what's from that.
I was talking with somebody the other day about AI, and they were brought up that AI allows the human to kind of enter back into the equation,
Yeah.
which I hadn't thought of in
Yeah.
that way before. But it makes sense that the AI is kind of clearing out the noise and saying, hey, you should look here. Here's an early warning signal, all that. And then the person can come in and say, using their creative faculties, go, oh yeah, this makes sense. We need to go over here. Here's how we kind of analyze the data and what we should put in place.
I love the idea that it might enable humans to be more creative because, as an engineer, like we do a lot of more monotonous stuff sometimes. I'd happily do less of that and more of the like, what could this be? How could we change piece of it? So I think there's a few jokes out there that, AI's come out and it's mainly been used to create art and like, wait, that's not what it's supposed to be used for. That's what we're supposed to do. And I really agree with it. Like we should be using AI to comb through data sets and point us in the right direction and then let the humans like layer the creativity and innovation over it.
Yeah, agreed. Any main takeaways from Advancing Prefab this year?
I think one of the main themes is definitely, and I think this has happened in the past, but the main theme has been relationships and the people that you meet. And that's always been a theme, but I think what has been really prevalent this year is really valuing what those relationships can do when you take them from consultations or, sort of client relationships into full collaborations. And some of the most exciting presentations this year have been on people that are like, yep, we figured out how to contract this and we just dove in together and we fully collaborated. Because, we've always been a little bit siloed in this industry. Presentations that have been the most interesting have been the ones where people have really collaborated. And as an industry, I think we've been pretty siloed in the past. Like a lot of our traditional delivery methods are sort of you do your piece and then you hand off to that person and they do their piece and they hand it off. And so that really makes it hard to truly collaborate because just the way it's all set up from a contracts point of view, from an ownership point of view, my background as a structural engineer, there wasn't a lot of incentive incentive for us to like make the GC's life that much easier or spend our time making the GC's life that much easier because that came out of our fee and our profit. Whereas that's one of the benefits I really do see about prefab is that you start to create these really collaborative project teams where everyone's problem is everyone's problem, and you're more incentivized to work together, you're more integrated, and you're more used to getting ideas from different people. There might be someone who is questioning the structure that's not the structural engineer. Great. The more ideas we can have from different people, the better, because it challenges you to think about it differently and to throw out any of the preconceived things of, oh, we've always done it that way.
Yeah, it brings you that much closer to what Amy was talking about yesterday in her keynote of the partnership model and
Absolutely.
bringing everybody together at the seat of the table.
Yeah, and we at Home Solutions, we have a really eclectic group of people on our staff that have come from a lot of industries. So we have engineers that might be mechanical, electrical, structural, fire, but then we also have a whole bunch of lab technicians and master craftsmen, and all of those people have come from different sort of walks of life. When we do our ideation sessions, we pull in as many different people as we can. We've done some structural based ones where we're looking at new connections, and I'll kind of preface it like, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect piece A with connect piece B, and it'll be someone who's outside the construction industry is like, well, why don't you just do it that way? Like, I don't know, like, but we just don't do it that way. And they're the people that could just come at it and look at it from a different angle and be like, I would do it that.
Right, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, what are you doing? That can happen even on these smaller prefab teams where like, yeah, they're all from construction, but they're coming at it from different angles. One of the things that's always interesting to me is we often leave MEP till like the end of a design phase. It's like, as the structure, we're literally designing structure to hang the MEP from it. But sometimes you build a structure and then you build structure inside the structure to hang the MEP, because instead of saying, here's the MEP and we're going to build around it and for it. And sometimes it just feels like things are a little back to front.
Yeah.
Prefab, we can change that.
For sure. Putting the crystal ball on the table, what do you think the main topic of conversation will be at Advancing Prefab in 2030, 5 years down?
Gosh, I don't know. Potentially we won't know for ages, because the way innovation works is usually it's a secret for a while. What I would like to see is how we can really use prefab to solve some of the environmental stresses that we're seeing. It's the labor stuff is always going to be an issue, but we really have to be taking better care of our world, or we're going to be in some pretty interesting places. And so from my perspective, what we're talking about 2030, I'm guessing is going to be, how do we deal with an increasing number of climate disasters? Because prefab is going to be a really obvious solution to that, just in the speed with which it can be deployed to areas that might be hit by increasing global warming impacts, but also how we as an industry can reduce that footprint to try and offset what's likely to happen in that space. But it kind of feels like that's the way things are going.
Yeah. So what are some kind of low-hanging fruit and steps that we should take now to start bringing that future to life in 5 years?
Yeah, I think we can all be better designers. We can all look for wastes in our process, and whether that's waste that's extra material, whether it's extra material that we're only using for a single purpose when maybe we could be using it for a double purpose, where it's waste in terms of labor and like things on site. So you've got more people on site, which becomes an issue because then they've got to travel there, and that's a carbon impact. There's all stuff that we could do better, and it's going to be interesting to see how the metrics in terms of cost versus environmental impact is going to sort of seesaw over the next wee while.
Shifting gears a bit on the workforce side of things, how do we bring new people into the industry?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is always going to be that it's an industry that doesn't innovate, and people want to be feeling like they're making a real impact in the world. And I think construction has a story there. I don't know if we're actually sharing it broadly, but it's creating roles where people can see themselves in those careers, for their lives. And it's, for a lot of people, perhaps they don't want to be on a construction site. And so prefab's wonderful because you take that away and they can be in a facility, and they can have, a nice office room, and, all of those things that are protected from the weather, and kind of highlighting what you can do in this industry is really cool. Like you talk to people here and ask them what they actually do, and they're doing all sorts of, weird and wonderful things. You've got people that are airport owners, and they're looking at how they're going to move planes and modular buildings around their sites. And you've got, general contractors, they're like, yeah, we're playing with all these different like robots and tools about how we're going to be able to build quickly. You've got prefab and modular companies who are like, yeah, we're creating these whole automation systems to move things through our factory in a really efficient way. And there's other people that are like, yeah, we're material scientists. We're looking at new construction materials. And so there's this huge overarching, like, different number of roles. And sort of how do we tell that story of like there's so many options for people in here. If you're a problem solver, then this is a great industry for you. And we can do a lot to make it so it feels like an industry for you.
Yeah, I think we have the story to tell. It's a really cool story. We do a really bad job of marketing that story and getting it out to people outside of our little bubble.
And we don't know, like, the people that are coming through, I guess, like high school today, the roles that they're going to take in this industry, we probably haven't even dreamed up yet.
Yeah.
So we're trying to sell them on a dream that hasn't happened, but it will.
Selling futures here. Yeah. So as we start to wrap up, kind of couple rapid fire questions for you. What is the phrase modeling the future? What does that kind of mean and bring up in your mind?
I mean, initially my first thought was modeling in terms of like computer and BIM modeling, but actually the more I thought on it, the more I thought, oh, actually no, role modeling the future in terms of what do you want to see and how can you be the change that you want to see?
What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation to me has always been about play, creativity, and fun. I think we are so innovative as children. Like, we constantly dream up worlds and we play and we create, things out of Lego that don't exist, or with your dolls or whatever that may be. And I think we, as adults, you become really aware of constraints in the world. You know that you've got a regulatory requirement. You know that gravity works. And how can you be innovative in such a way that, you just play? And I was having a really interesting conversation with a colleague recently who had done an IDEO course, and she said they gave the recommendation that when you first start doing an ideation session, you should have a requirement that all the bad ideas go out first. Everyone put out all the bad ideas that will never work. And I just loved that when she told me it, because it's such a powerful thing to say, okay, we're going to start with the bad ideas. So write them down. Don't be afraid to not share them, because you never know what that's going to lead to.
I love that mindset. Play like a kid and think like a kid too. I have 4 little kids, so they're the most creative humans ever.
Yeah.
And to bring that kind of playfulness into work of, throw out this random stuff, because what on the surface might seem like that'll never work. Somebody else can go, actually, you can make this work if you do this.
Modify it. Yeah. And I think we become so restraints governed that we can only then see the way we've always done it, as opposed to, start with something that will never work and go from there.
Yeah, I like that. How do people find out more information and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach me on LinkedIn, or our company, Holmes Solutions, has both a good LinkedIn presence and then a website. We're always happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing, what would you pick to innovate?
I think it would have to be something to do with just our housing crisis. I'm trying to think of the best way that I could solve that with one snap of the fingers, and it's not immediately coming to me, but just a way that we could safely, warmly house, the planet. That would be something that I see would be, at that point, the construction sector could be like, we've succeeded. We've won. We've done our job. And just knowing that everyone had a warm, safe space to call home would be like the best miracle I think we could achieve. Yeah.
That's a good one. It's a good note to end on. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.